Listen carefully. At 3:33 you will no longer plead with God, you will speak as God. And the moment you do, the outer world, that obedient servant, will rearrange itself to match your word. Would you dare to test this sacred formula tonight? In this teaching, I will give you a sacred formula, 3 words spoken at 3:33 that prove imagination creates reality. If you have struggled to manifest, doubted, or felt trapped by what your senses show you, this is for you. By the end of this video, you will know how to silence the 3D world, command your subconscious, and step into the state where your desire is already fulfilled. Not tomorrow, but now. I know the struggle well. You try technique after technique, yet the bills remain. The person you love seems distant. The body aches. And so you wonder, am I doing this right? Is the law failing me? The truth is simple. You have been trying to change the shadow while ignoring the source. The shadow is the 3D world. The source is your I am. Once you learn to speak from I am, reality has no choice but to follow. And that is what I will show you. So here is what we will unfold together. First, I will reveal why 3:33 is no ordinary time, but a signal to the deeper self. Then, I will show you the exact words, the sacred formula that, when spoken from the end, compel your world to obey. Next, we will practice how to enter the silence where the formula takes root, so it is not mere words, but the living seed of a new life. Finally, I will share visions and stories that prove this law beyond all doubt. Stay with me, for the secret is not at the start but hidden within the journey. By the end, you will know the difference between hoping and assuming, between wishing and commanding. You will have the power in your own mouth. Now listen closely, for here's something almost everyone overlooks. You've heard the number 3 mentioned in scripture again and again, but perhaps you never paused to ask why. 3 is not just a number. It is the seal of completion, the signal that a thing is finished in the unseen and ready to break forth into the seen. You remember Jonah, swallowed up in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights? What was that story telling you? It was not about a man in the sea. It was about the soul in darkness, waiting in the womb of imagination until the moment of resurrection. On the 3rd day, Jonah was delivered because 3 marks the end of concealment and the beginning of revelation. Think also of the Christ who lay in the tomb 3 days before rising again. Why 3? Why not 2 or 4? Because 3 is the law's way of saying it is done. The seed has completed its hidden work. 1 is the planting, 2 is the gestation, 3 is the birth. Whenever you see 3 in the Bible, read it as the inner assurance that your imaginal act has reached maturity. And when you see it repeated, 3 upon 3, like 3:33, it is the voice of heaven crying out, "Verily, verily, verily, this is certain. This cannot fail." Have you noticed how often your own life moves in 3s? The 3rd attempt succeeds. The 3rd day brings clarity. Even the rhythm of your breath, inhale, pause, exhale, follows the pattern of 3. This is not chance. It is the stamp of the divine order, whispering that all things are conceived, carried, and then brought forth. So when the clock strikes 3:33, you are not stumbling upon a random number, you are stepping into a sacred signal. The universe itself is reminding you that creation is already finished, and you are standing at the threshold of its unveiling. Now let me ask you, how would you live if you truly believed this? If you knew that every desire you carried was already in its 3rd day, already ripening to burst forth, would you still doubt? Would you still chase the outer world for proof? Or would you rest in the silence, confident that 3 has declared the work complete? I tell you, when you honor the number 3, you honor the mystery of resurrection. And when you see 3:33, you are being summoned to remember the work is finished, the tomb is empty, the new life is at hand. That's why I say, the first key to this sacred hour is to understand the law of 3. For without it, you will treat 3:33 as superstition. but with it you will know it as the sign of your rebirth. This is the hour when heaven says, "It is done." Step into it. When the clock strikes 3:33, it is more than just a curious alignment of digits glowing in the night. It is a reminder that this hour belongs to the hidden self, the deeper self, the part of you that does not sleep. The body may rest, the senses may fall silent, but the subconscious never slumbers. It is always receiving, always shaping, always faithful to the last impression given to it. And so the hours when the conscious mind is weakest are the hours when the subconscious is most open, most receptive, most pliable to the seed of your word. That is why, when you stir at 3:33, whether in the night or in the stillness of the dawn, you are standing at the threshold between two worlds, the world of facts that seem so solid, and the world of imagination which alone gives them birth. Most people miss this, for they toss in bed thinking of worries, of bills, of disappointments, and they let those feelings slip past the guard of reason into the fertile soil of the subconscious. Then they rise in the morning surprised that the same troubles return, not knowing they have faithfully planted them by night. But when you know the law, you will not waste this hour. You will treat it as sacred. You will see that 3:33 is the liminal gate, the thin veil, when the conscious does not fight and the subconscious does not resist. At this moment you may speak directly, not to the world outside, but to the womb of creation within you, and it will receive your word as fact. I tell you, if you can grasp this, you will no longer complain of unanswered prayers. For prayers fail only when they never reach the subconscious, or when they are planted with doubt and fear. But at 3:33 the door is open wide. You have slipped halfway into sleep, yet you are still aware enough to guide your thoughts. That is the state akin to sleep, the holy of holies, the narrow path where imagination rules without interference. You may picture yourself already where you long to be. You may feel the joy of the wish fulfilled as if it were happening now. And if you persist just a moment longer, the subconscious will take it in, believe it, and begin to move heaven and earth to make it so. Think of it like this. If the conscious mind is the sower, the subconscious is the soil. During the day, the soil is covered, guarded, not easily broken. But at night, and most especially in the still hours when the world is hushed, the soil is soft, loose, ready for the seed. At 3:33 the soil is richest, the ground most fertile, the silence most profound. What will you plant in that silence? Will you sow weeds of worry, or will you sow the sacred formula that brings forth life? I say, choose wisely, for the soil does not judge, it only yields according to the seed. And perhaps you have noticed this in your own life. You wake at odd hours, and a thought comes strong and vivid, and later that day or that week you see it played out in your world. You think it coincidence, but I tell you it is law. The subconscious accepted your night thought and brought it to pass. So why leave it to chance? Why not make the most of the gate when it opens at 3:33? Instead of drifting in fear, choose to speak in faith. Instead of letting shadows rule you, command the light. For in that hour, the power that creates worlds bends low to hear your whisper. And whatever you dare to claim of yourself, whatever you boldly assume in that silence, will harden into fact. That is why 3:33 is no ordinary time. It is the crack in the wall, the opening in the curtain, the passage where the conscious weakens and the subconscious listens. To the unknowing, it is just another number on a clock. But to the awakened, it is a holy summons. It says, "Speak now, for the soil is ready. Plant your desire, and I will bring it forth." And when you understand this, you will never fear the hour again. You will wait for it with reverence, as a farmer waits for rain, knowing that in this silence lies the certainty of harvest. Now hear me well, for this is the part that so many overlook. You cannot stumble into the sacred hour of 3:33 with a mind racing from the day's troubles, a heart filled with agitation, and expect the formula to bear fruit. Just as no farmer scatters seed into stony ground and expects a harvest, you cannot hurl careless words into a restless mind and call it prayer. Preparation is everything. And yet, do not imagine that this preparation is laborious, complicated, or reserved for saints. No, it is simple. It is the art of becoming still, the practice of letting go, the holy quiet in which the word can be planted. The silence at 3:33 is not just the absence of noise in the room, it is the absence of resistance within you. It is a loosening of the grip on appearances, a gentle releasing of the day, until you can say with full assurance, I am, and that is enough. So how do you prepare yourself for that moment? You do it not by striving, but by surrendering. You do it not by multiplying words, but by entering the stillness where one word is enough. Long before 3:33 arrives, you cultivate the habit of detachment. You train yourself to observe the outer world but not be bound by it. You say to yourself, this too is a shadow, and I will not chase shadows. When you lie down at night, you let the body grow heavy, the breath slow, the thoughts drift away, until you feel that sweet borderland between waking and sleep. That is the door. And 3:33 is the time when it swings wide. And as you rest there, not straining, not forcing, you ready yourself to speak as one who knows the law. Expectation is the secret fragrance of this preparation. To enter the silence without expectation is like entering a garden without planting. You may enjoy the stillness, but nothing will bloom. Expectation is not the frantic demand that something happen, but the serene knowing that what you plant is already done. You go into the silence as though you are returning to a place you have always belonged. You speak the word not to make it true, but because it is true. You do not beg the universe to respond. You rest in the knowledge that it already has. Can you feel the difference? One is striving, the other is resting. One is grasping, the other is receiving. At 3:33, only the latter will open the womb of the subconscious. Let me give you an image. Imagine a mother carrying a child. She does not lie awake every night wondering if the seed she carries will grow. She does not dig into her own body to check if the process is working. She simply rests, nourishes, trusts, and expects. In time, the invisible becomes visible. That is how you must prepare for 3:33. You carry your desire within as though it were already conceived, already growing, already inevitable. You do not run about seeking signs. You simply wait in quiet assurance until the hour comes. And then you speak with the calm authority of one who knows, I am. I tell you, if you enter this hour with stillness, with silence, with expectation, you cannot fail. The world may call it foolishness, but the world knows not the law. The law is faithful, and the womb of creation is always ready. The only question is whether you have prepared the ground. Have you quieted the mind enough to hear the whisper of your own word? Have you stilled the heart enough to feel the reality of your assumption? Have you entered the silence not as a beggar but as a son returning to his father's house? For if you have, then when 3:33 strikes, you will not hesitate. You will not doubt. You will speak, and the unseen will move. And in the days that follow, the outer world, that obedient servant, will rise up and clothe your word in flesh. So prepare yourself. Let go of the day before you lie down. Release every care, every worry, every complaint. Let the body sink deep, let the breath steady, let the heart rest. And when the veil opens at 3:33, step into that silence with holy expectation, for you are not there to ask, you are there to declare. And what you declare in that hour, clothed in feeling, will not return void. Now we step deeper, for it is not enough to know the hour, you must know the word spoken in that hour. And here lies the mystery that has been hidden from the ages but revealed to those who dare to listen. Every word you have ever spoken, every affirmation, every denial, every declaration, whether whispered in silence or shouted in fear, has first been born from the root. I am. Before you say you are poor, before you say you are rich, before you claim to be sick or well, unloved or cherished, forgotten or chosen, you begin with I am. And that opening phrase is not casual, it is not empty, it is the name of God. When Moses asked for the name of the Eternal, the voice from the burning bush gave no title, no image, no form. It simply said, I am that I am. And then it added, tell them I am has sent you. That is the eternal secret. The God you seek is not distant, not hidden in temples of stone, not bound to rituals or priests, but is your own awareness, your own sense of being, your simple recognition that you are. Pause and consider how effortless it island. You may forget your name, your past, your possessions, your titles, but you cannot forget that you are. That sense of existence before you add anything to it, before you clothe it in definitions, is the purest truth you know. That is, I am. And from that root, all speech grows. The moment you add to I am, you set creation in motion. Say I am weak, and the subconscious accepts the command. Say I am strong, and it equally accepts it. It is no respecter of persons, no judge of truth or falsehood. It only receives and expresses what you dare to assume. Do you see the power here? The world has told you your words are idle, but I tell you they are never idle. Every I am you have spoken is a seed, and the subconscious, that faithful womb, has been birthing them into your world. So when the hour of 3:33 arrives, you are not simply speaking words, you are touching the root of all language, the fountain of creation itself. You are saying, with God let there be. And what follows that phrase is not a wish but a decree. Understand this, and you will no longer treat affirmations lightly. You will no longer let the lips mutter, I am tired, I am broke, I am lost, as though such words are harmless. No. You will know that every utterance is an act of creation, and you will guard the gateway of I am with holy reverence. And perhaps you will ask, but how do I know it truly works? How do I know these words are not mere self-talk? Look to your own life. Look to the conditions around you. They are nothing but the crystallized record of your past I ams. Were you not saying, I am unlucky, I am overlooked, I am without? And did not your world mirror it back with cold precision? And when, perhaps for a season, you dared to say, I am blessed, I am chosen, I am loved, did you not see how swiftly circumstances bend to that new decree? You have been proving the law unconsciously all your life. Now I call you to use it consciously. That is why I begin here, with the power of I am. Because if you do not grasp this, the sacred formula at 3:33 will feel like superstition. But if you see that every word springs from this holy root, then you will approach that hour with awe. You will not beg, you will not plead. You will declare, I am, and you will know that what follows is already finished in the unseen. This is the foundation of all creation. Awareness plus assumption equals expression. Nothing more, nothing less. So guard your I am. Speak it with purpose. And when the veil opens at 3:33, remember that you are not simply a man or woman trying to change conditions. You are the very voice of God declaring reality into being. And the moment you say, I am, the universe bends to obey. Now that you see the root from which all speech springs, let me draw the curtain back further and show you the sacred formula itself, the three words that at 3:33 will cause reality to bend and reshape itself around you. Do not expect something complicated, hidden in arcane symbols or foreign tongues. Truth is always clothed in simplicity, for the law does not need your effort to make it powerful, it only needs your acceptance. The formula is this: I am it. 3 words, no more. But in those words lies the power that spoke worlds into being. In those words lies the authority to call forth the unseen as though it were seen, and to rest in the certainty that it is already done. When you say, I am it, you are not wishing, you are not hoping, You are not begging. You are declaring the end as present fact. And the subconscious, hearing those words clothed with feeling, accepts them as the only reality and sets in motion all that is needed to bring them forth. I tell you, you could say 1,000 other affirmations, you could recite volumes of prayers, you could chant for hours, but if they are not clothed in this formula, they will fall flat. For the subconscious does not respond to length or eloquence. It responds only to the certainty of I am. Think of it. When the Creator spoke, He did not describe the darkness or argue with it. He did not say, I will be light, or one day light will come. He simply said, let there be light, and there was light. In the same way, when you stand at 3:33 and declare, I am wealthy, I am loved, I am healed, I am free, you are not describing a condition to come. You are decreeing a condition that already exists in the unseen. And because imagination is the only reality, because the subconscious is the womb of creation, that unseen condition must emerge into the seen. Perhaps you have tried before and felt nothing happened. It was not because the law failed, but because you did not clothe the formula with faith. You may have repeated the words with your lips, but within you was the silent whisper, I am not. That whisper cancelled the decree. The formula is not magic in the sense men think it is divine law. The words I am are always obeyed. But the question is, what did you add to them? Did you add fear or faith, lack or fullness, sickness or health, loneliness or love? The law cannot choose for you. It only amplifies what you declare. This is why I tell you, the formula must be spoken not as an experiment but as a decree. You do not test it nervously. You embody it boldly. You stand in the silence of 3:33 and you declare, I am it. And then you rest. You do not repeat it like a desperate chant. You feel it once with such intensity that the subconscious accepts it, and then you let it be. A farmer does not dig up his seed each morning to see if it is growing. He plants it, waters it, and trusts the soil. Do likewise with these words. I remember when I first dared to practice this. I lay in my bed, knowing the bills were high, the purse was empty, and the world said, you are poor. But at 3:33, I turned inward and declared, I am wealthy. I did not mean, I will be. I did not mean, one day it may come. I meant, I already am. And in that moment, though nothing had changed outwardly, I felt the quiet joy of possession. I rose the next morning with no evidence in hand. But within days the bridge of events unfolded, and the provision arrived in ways I depths could never have arranged. That is the law. That is the power of these 3 words. So here is the formula. I am it. Fill in the blank with what you desire. Speak it at 3:33, when the veil is thin and the subconscious is listening. Do not speak it lightly. Speak it as one who knows that to declare is to create. And then rest in the assurance that the seed is planted, the harvest is sure, and the world has no choice but to obey. Now that you have heard the sacred formula, let me show you the secret that gives those words flesh. For without it, the formula remains but a dry seed never watered. Words alone are not enough, my friend. You may say, I am wealthy, I am loved, I am free, and let those words fall from your lips 1,000 times. But if you feel nothing, if they are not clothed in the living garment of emotion, the subconscious will not quicken them. The subconscious is not moved by the chatter of lips, but by the vibration of feeling. It is not impressed by the noise of repetition, but by the silent conviction carried in the heart. So the law requires more than speech. It requires speech clothed with the spirit of belief, the kind of feeling that makes the statement real to you in the present moment. Do you recall the words, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us? What is that but a picture of imagination clothed in feeling until it takes on tangible reality? The Word alone is invisible, airy, without substance. But when you marry it to feeling, it takes form, it takes weight, it becomes embodied. If you say, I am prosperous, yet within you you still feel the pinch of lack, you are declaring one thing but impressing another. The subconscious hears not your lips but your mood, your emotional tone, your inner vibration. It is that feeling which it receives as fact and expresses without fail. So when you enter the silence at 3:33 and speak the formula, do not simply mouth the words as though reading lines in a play you do not believe. Enter the scene. Feel its reality. Suppose you declare, I am loved. Then, in that moment, let yourself feel the warmth of love wrapping around you. Hear the tone of a beloved voice speaking your name. Imagine the look in someone's eyes who sees you as precious. Let gratitude swell in your chest until you cannot help but smile. That is the clothing of the word. That is what makes it alive. Or perhaps you declare, I am wealthy. Then feel the ease of abundance. Sense the weight of a full purse. The freedom of knowing every need is already met. Breathe the satisfaction of having more than enough. Let that sense of security sink deep, deeper than thought, deeper than doubt, until it is the air you breathe. That is the feeling that seals the word. The world has taught you to say what you do not believe, to repeat phrases without conviction, to mask fear with hollow affirmations, and then you wonder why nothing changes. But I tell you, the law cannot be fooled. It listens not to the surface but to the depth. It listens not to what you want but to what you are. And what you are in feeling, you inevitably become in fact. That is why I have said again and again, feeling is the secret. Without it, words are barren. With it, even a whisper can create a universe. Think of a child playing make-believe. She does not simply say, I am a queen, and remain unconvinced. No, she feels the crown upon her head, she walks with dignity, she commands her dolls as loyal subjects, and in her world she is a queen indeed. That is the spirit you must recover. Not the cynical mind that says, but I do not see it yet, but the childlike heart that says, I feel it now, therefore it island. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. So when 3:33 comes, do not rattle off the formula like a student reciting lessons. Speak it once, speak it clearly, and then wrap it in the robe of feeling. Let the declaration and the emotion become one. And when they fuse, the subconscious bows in obedience and begins to build your world accordingly. That is the art. That is the secret. That is how the invisible becomes visible, how the dream becomes fact, how the word becomes flesh. What I am about to tell you may sound strange at first, but stay with me and let it take root in you, for if you grasp this one truth, you will never again be deceived by appearances. The world you see with your eyes, the conditions you touch with your hands, the facts you hear with your ears, all of this belongs not to the present, but to the past. It is not alive, it is not creative, it is not even truly real. It is the shadow cast by yesterday's assumptions. The body you wear today is the result of feelings you accepted in the past. The relationships you struggle with or rejoice in are nothing but the echoes of imaginal conversations held long ago. The money in your purse or the emptiness of it, the home you live in or long for, the opportunities that surround you or seem absent, these are all harvests, grown from seeds once sown in imagination. And just as a shadow cannot move of its own accord, so these conditions cannot create themselves. They only follow the light of consciousness, obeying without question the shape you assume within. But most men are fooled by shadows. They stare at the outer picture and call it life. They see debt and declare, I am poor. They see loneliness and affirm, I am unloved. They see sickness and repeat, I am unwell. And in doing so, they forget that what they call reality is nothing more than the mirror of what they already believed. They fight the shadow as though it were the substance, never realizing the battle is won or lost in imagination long before the world shows its face. Have you ever chased your own shadow in the sunlight, trying to outrun it? No matter how fast you run, it only keeps pace, mimicking your every moves. That is the futility of trying to change the outer world without first changing the inner assumption. The shadow has no life of its own. It only reflects what you are being. This is why I say to you, stop trying to wrestle with the 3D world. Do not plead with circumstances. Do not wait for signs in matter. Do not beg people to act differently. All of that is shadow play, and shadows cannot be corrected at their own level. If you wish to change the scene, you must turn away from the projection and address the projector itself, your imagination. That is the source. That is the light. And once the light shifts, the shadow must follow. Let me give you an image. Imagine a lantern casting light upon the wall. The shapes that appear on that wall depend entirely on what stands before the lantern. Place your hand there, and the wall shows a hand. Place a bird, and it shows a bird. The wall does not choose, it only reflects. So it is with your life. The 3D world is the wall. Your imagination is the lantern. Whatever form you hold before it in consciousness is what the world will project. If you do not like the picture, do not scold the wall. Do not curse the shadow. Simply change the image you are holding within. And perhaps you will say, but what I see is so real, so stubborn, so immovable. Yes, to the senses it appears so, because the harvest is always larger than the seed. A single acorn becomes a towering oak. A single assumption becomes a world of facts. But do not be deceived by size or weight. The oak, mighty as it seems, still began as a thought. And so too your world, massive and unyielding as it appears, is nothing more than yesterday's feeling grown full. Change the feeling now, and tomorrow's harvest must obey. So I tell you, see 3D for what it is. A shadow, a footprint left behind by the living reality within. Do not worship it. Do not fear it. Do not let it dictate your faith. Let it remind you instead of the seed you once planted. And if that seed no longer serves you, plant anew, for the shadow cannot resist the light, and the light is your own I am. Here is where many stumble, and I must speak plainly so that you do not fall into the same snare. You have heard me say that the outer world is but the shadow, that all you see is nothing more than yesterday's assumptions made visible, and yet how quickly the senses rise up to contradict the unseen. You speak the sacred formula at 3:33, you declare I am free. And then when the morning comes, you look around and see the same bills, the same empty chair beside you, the same weariness in the body, and the senses cry out, nothing has changed. And if you believe them, if you give your loyalty to appearances, you undo the seed you planted. You step out of the end and back into the old story, and then you wonder why your harvest is delayed, why your world seems to mock you. The law has not failed you. You have failed to remain loyal to the unseen. Loyalty to the unseen is faith, and faith is nothing mystical, nothing vague. It is simply persistence in assumption, a stubborn refusal to accept anything as final except the wish fulfilled. It means that even when everything outside tells you no, you hold fast to the yes you declared within. It means you look at the shadows and you say, you are only the echo of yesterday, and I am no longer there. I live in the end. This is what Scripture meant when it said, judge not by appearances, but judge righteous judgment. For righteous judgment is not what the eye sees, but what imagination knows. I remember a time when I had no money for passage home, and every fact of the world insisted it was impossible. The purse was empty. The ticket office closed its doors to me, and yet in imagination I walked the streets of Barbados. I sat in my father's house. I felt the warm sun upon my skin. I lived in the end, though the shadow shouted otherwise. And what happened? A bridge of events unfolded, and within days the ticket was placed in my hands without my lifting a finger to arrange it. What seemed impossible to the senses was inevitable to faith, for I had remained loyal to the unseen. Can you see then why loyalty is everything? Without it, you wander back and forth between two states, planting a seed at night and plucking it up by day, affirming one moment and denying the next. With it, you stand firm. You plant the seed, you water it with feeling, and then you refuse to be swayed by contradiction. You walk through the wilderness with the promised land alive in your heart. You carry within you the invisible assurance that the Word has already become flesh, even if the shadow has not yet caught up. So I ask you, where is your loyalty? Is it to the shifting sands of circumstance, or is it to the rock of your assumption? Do you believe the evidence of the senses more than the voice of I am? For if you give your loyalty to appearances, you will live and die a slave to shadows. But if you give your loyalty to the unseen, if you dwell in the end and refuse to leave it, then the whole world must bend to conform to that end. For the outer has no choice. It is not master but servant. It must mirror what you are in consciousness. Therefore I tell you, live in the end, regardless of contradiction. Walk as though it were already true. Think, feel, act, and rest in the state of the wish fulfilled. Let the outer scream its denial, let the facts mock you, let delay tempt you, remain unmoved. Say within yourself, it is finished, and hold fast. For he who remains loyal to the unseen will see it clothed in the seen, and no power in heaven or earth can prevent it. Now I must show you a safeguard, for without it, even the strongest declaration can be weakened, and even the most powerful assumption can be undone. I speak of the discipline of the mind, the steady watch over your inner speech, the practice often called a mental diet. Do not mistake this for some trivial exercise, for it is the very armor of faith, the shield that guards the seed you plant at 3:33 from being stolen by doubt. You see, when you speak the sacred formula in the silence of the night, the subconscious receives it in purity, but the moment you rise and step into the clamor of the day, the senses begin their old chorus. The world shouts, look here, feel this, nothing has changed. And if you are not watchful, you join their song. You begin to rehearse the old story in your mind. I am still broke. I am still alone. I am still sick. And though you may never speak it aloud, your inner murmuring betrays your assumption, and the subconscious, hearing it repeated again and again, accepts that as the truer seed. Thus the word you planted at night is choked by the weeds of your careless inner conversation. So what must you do? You must guard the gates of thought as a watchman guards the city at night. You must examine every word you speak inwardly and ask, does this align with the end I have assumed, or does it contradict it? If it aligns, let it pass and strengthen you. If it contradicts, cast it out at once and replace it with the word of faith. This is the mental diet, refusing to feed upon doubt, fear, or complaint, and nourishing only that which affirms the wish fulfilled. It may sound simple, but let me tell you, it is the hardest work you will ever undertake, for the old self is persistent and the world is noisy. Yet, if you are faithful in this discipline, you will find that your assumption takes root more quickly, grows more firmly, and flowers more beautifully than ever before. Imagine with me a gardener who plants a rare and precious seed. He knows the soil is fertile, he knows the season is right, but he also knows that weeds and thorns will try to rise up and choke the tender shoot. So he watches daily, pulling up every intruder, guarding the space with care, watering and tending with love. Would you call his labor foolish? No. You would say he is wise, for he knows the value of what he planted. So too with you. When you have planted the sacred formula, I am it, at 3:33, do not leave it unattended. Guard it through the day. Watch over it with a mental diet that permits no contradiction to take root. Each time the mind drifts to old fears, gently but firmly bring it back and whisper within, it is done, I am. Do you see now why the apostle urged us to take every thought captive? For the true battlefield is not out there among men and circumstances. It is here, within, in the quiet corridors of imagination where conversations are held that no ear hears but every event reveals. Your inner speech is the prophet of your future. What you mutter in silence will one day be shouted from the rooftops of experience. And so I tell you, keep your diet pure. Refuse the feast of fear. Refuse the banquet of worry. Refuse the bitter bread of self-pity. Feed only on the manna of your assumption, the sweet word of your end already fulfilled. Yes, it will feel like discipline at first. You will catch yourself 100 times rehearsing the old story. But do not despair. Each time you correct yourself, each time you return to the truth of your assumption, you are training the mind to obey. You are strengthening the hold of your new state. You are watering the seed with persistence. And soon the correction becomes natural, the new inner speech becomes automatic, and the subconscious, hearing the same note struck again and again, plays it back in the symphony of your outer world. So I say to you, treat your mind as sacred ground. Do not allow any careless word to plant itself there. Clothe every inner sentence with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And when doubt whispers, silence it with your affirmation. When fear rises, drown it in the calm voice of I am. This is your armor. This is your diet. This is how you keep the harvest safe until the day it appears in full. Now that you understand the nature of the shadow, the necessity of loyalty, and the guarding of inner speech, let us pass into the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctuary where the formula must be planted. I speak of the state akin to sleep, which I often call Sats. Many have heard this phrase, yet few understand its power. Sats is not ordinary sleep, nor is it mere drowsiness. It is that golden twilight between waking and sleeping, where the conscious mind has loosened its grip and the subconscious lies open like fertile soil. It is the doorway to creation, the narrow gate through which every word must pass if it is to be made flesh. And the hour of 3:33, as I have already told you, is when this gate swings open most readily, for at that time the world is hushed, the body heavy, the mind quiet, and the veil between seen and unseen is thin as breath. So how do you enter Sats? Do not force it, for force is the enemy of stillness. Rather, surrender yourself gently. Lie down in comfort, or sit in a chair where the body can rest without effort. Let the breath deepen and slow, like the tide ebbing from the shore. Feel the weight of your limbs, the heaviness of the eyelids, the soft pull of silence wrapping itself around you. Do not strain to banish thoughts. Let them drift as clouds pass across the sky, knowing they cannot linger when you give them no attention. The goal is not blankness but absorption. You quiet the senses, not to become empty but to become filled with the image of your desire. And when you feel yourself hovering, not fully awake, not fully asleep, but balanced in that sweet in-between, then you have entered Sats. It is here that the formula is spoken with greatest power. For in this state, the conscious mind no longer argues, no longer protests, no longer interrupts with its doubts. The gatekeeper has stepped aside, and your word goes straight into the womb of the subconscious. You may speak only once, and if it is clothed with feeling, it is enough. For in Sats, one drop of conviction is more potent than hours of frantic prayer shouted in wakefulness. Think of how children fall asleep. They do not labor to enter that state. They do not analyze the process. They relax, they let go, they surrender. And as they drift, the images they hold in imagination sink deep into the subconscious. That is why children so easily believe their dreams, why their world so quickly conforms to their fancies. You, too, must recover that childlike ease. Do not approach Sats as a technique to master, but as a return to what you once knew instinctively. Rest, surrender, allow, and the state will come of its own accord. Once you are there, once the body is still and the senses subdued, then let the imaginal act begin. Do not attempt a long drama, for the subconscious is not impressed by complexity. Choose a short, simple scene that would be true if your wish were already fulfilled. Feel the wish as present fact. If you desire love, imagine a hand in yours, a voice saying, "I love you." If you desire wealth, imagine a wallet filled, a bank account overflowing, the relief of debts gone. If you desire healing, imagine yourself rising with ease, feeling strength in every limb. Keep it short. Keep it vivid, keep it repeated, until it takes on the tones of reality. This is the essence of Sats. To dwell in the end in such a way that the subconscious accepts it as done. And remember this, Sats is not about effort but about immersion. If you find yourself straining, you are still too awake. If you slip into dreamless sleep before impressing the desire, you have gone too far. The sweet spot is between, where imagination becomes more real than the outer world. That is where creation happens. That is the field where God and man meet. That is the temple where word becomes flesh. So tonight, when the clock strikes 3:33, do not lie restless, counting minutes, waiting nervously. Prepare yourself earlier. Let the body rest, let the mind drift. And when you feel that golden state rising, speak the word, feel it, clothed in certainty, and then let sleep take you. For the subconscious, once impressed, never forgets. It will carry your assumption into the day, weaving the bridge of events that will deliver you to the very state you dared to assume. This is the practice of entering Sats at 3:33. This is the art of planting in silence. This is the gateway through which your desire becomes fact. You have prepared yourself. You have entered the silence. The body lies still, the mind is hushed, the gate of Sats is open. Now comes the holy moment, the act itself, the planting of the seed that will grow into your harvest. And I tell you, this act is not noisy, not frantic, not dramatic to the outer ear. It is a whisper. It is the soft yet thunderous utterance of the words, I am it. Speak them as though they were the most natural thing in the world, for indeed they are, and yet speak them with the weight of eternity, for indeed they carry the authority of God Himself. This is not the shouting of a beggar, nor the pleading of a servant. This is the quiet decree of a master who knows the law. When you say, I am it, let the words roll gently through you, not as syllables on the tongue, but as truth in the marrow of your being. Whisper them with feeling, not straining, not forcing, but allowing them to arise from the core of consciousness. Perhaps you will move your lips.
When you learn to put God first before anything else, everything in life begins to align with a divine order that the human mind alone cannot orchestrate. There is a presence within you, a creative power that shapes your reality, and when you make this the center of your focus, you unlock doors that were once invisible. The moment you awaken to this truth, you begin to see that the outer world is only a shadow of your inner world, and to seek fulfillment in appearances without anchoring yourself in the source is to chase illusions. When you place God first, you are not bowing to an external force somewhere distant. You are turning inward to the eternal spirit that breathes through you. To put God first is to recognize that your imagination, your awareness, your consciousness of being is the highest treasure you have been given. Every desire, every longing of your heart is already known by this indwelling presence. And the moment you prioritize communion with it, life itself responds. People spend their days chasing possessions, relationships, and recognition, believing these things will bring peace. But when you begin with God, when you acknowledge the power within, those very things come to you without strain. So many live in fear of lack, fear of rejection, fear of failure. But fear exists only when we forget who walks with us. When God is first, fear loses its grip, because you understand that no situation, no person, no circumstance has authority over your destiny. To put God first is to walk in certainty, even when appearances contradict your faith. It is to look at what seems impossible and know that nothing is beyond reach for the one who aligns with divine power. To put God first means to rise in the morning and remember that your day is not shaped by random events, but by your consciousness. Before you answer the demands of the world, you quiet yourself and align with the truth of who you are. You declare within, I am the beginning and the end of my experience. What I claim in consciousness must appear in form. This act of turning inward before rushing outward ensures that every step you take is guided, every word you speak is fruitful, every thought you entertain is building the life you desire. The world teaches you to seek safety in accumulation, in status, in the approval of others, but these are shifting sands. When you make them first, you will always feel unstable, always anxious, because the outer world can be taken away. But when you make God first, you build on rock. Nothing can shake you, nothing can move you. Even if all else falls, you remain secure, because your foundation is not in the temporal but in the eternal. Putting God first also transforms how you treat others. You no longer see them merely as bodies or personalities, but as expressions of the same divine life that flows through you. You bless them instead of curse them. You forgive instead of condemn. You lift them up instead of pulling them down. For when God is first, love flows naturally, and love fulfills the law. Love attracts all things, heals all wounds, and opens all doors. There will be moments when distractions call to you, when the world tempts you to put your job, your wealth, your relationships, or even your fears above the divine presence within. But you must remind yourself none of these have meaning apart from God. If you chase them without the source, they turn to dust. But if you put God first, they take their rightful place as blessings added unto you. Seek first the kingdom within, and all these things will be added. To put God first is to trust that you are never alone. It is to know that every step you take is guided, every challenge you face has already been answered, and every dream in your heart was planted there by the one who intends to bring it to pass. You align yourself with this inner authority, and you live with the assurance that life is not against you, but always working for you. So do not delay. Begin now. Before you take a step, before you speak a word, before you reach for the things of this world, turn within and acknowledge the presence that gives life to all. Place God above all else, and you will discover that in doing so, you have placed yourself in harmony with the highest law of being. And when harmony is your foundation, nothing can stand against you, nothing can withhold from you, nothing can deny you the fullness of life. For the one who puts God first, all things are possible. To put God first is to place the eternal presence at the very center of your being, making it the foundation upon which everything else in life rests. When you begin here, you recognize that life is not a series of random happenings or accidents, but a precise outworking of the consciousness you hold within. The outer world, with all of its seeming challenges, opportunities, and changes, is nothing more than the mirror reflecting your inner state. When you put God first, when you turn your awareness to the divine center before engaging the world, you align yourself with a higher order that directs your steps, guides your actions, and shapes your destiny. This alignment is not forced, nor does it come through struggle. It flows naturally, like water finding its path to the ocean. Life becomes complicated and heavy when you attempt to arrange everything from the outside, when you attempt to control circumstances without first establishing harmony within. People strive endlessly, chasing after wealth, status, and recognition, only to find themselves empty, because they have reversed the order of life. They put effects before cause, shadows before substance, the outer before the inner. But the secret is simple: begin with God, begin with the invisible source, and the outer world conforms. When you align your mind and heart with the indwelling presence, the very structure of your reality reshapes itself to match that awareness. What once felt blocked suddenly opens. What once seemed impossible becomes possible. What once appeared delayed arrives in perfect timing. To put God first is to understand that the world cannot grant you peace, security, or fulfillment. The world can only echo the consciousness you carry. If you begin with fear, the world will echo fear. If you begin with lack, the world will echo lack. But if you begin with God, if you acknowledge the truth that the creative power of the universe dwells within you, the world will echo abundance, harmony, and joy. This is not about reciting words without feeling, nor about outward rituals that never touch the heart. It is about stillness, recognition, and conscious alignment. You quiet the noise of appearances and turn inward, knowing that the unseen reality is more real than the seen. Imagine rising in the morning and before checking messages, before worrying about obligations, before stepping into the noise of the world, you anchor yourself in the awareness of God. You remind yourself, The day ahead of me is not determined by events outside, but by the consciousness I carry within. You breathe, you imagine, you declare who you are in truth. You put God first. In that moment, you are setting the tone for the entire day. You are aligning with divine order. And as you step forward, people respond differently. Situations unfold more smoothly. Opportunities appear, not because the world has suddenly changed, but because you have changed the order in which you approach life. This alignment removes strain. The world tells you to struggle, to compete, to fight for your place. But when God is first, you discover that life is not a fight but a flow. Opportunities are drawn to you because your inner state magnetizes them. The effort is not in forcing things to happen, but in maintaining your awareness of truth. You realize that your imagination is not daydreaming. It is the blueprint of reality. To imagine in alignment with God is to allow the unseen to take form. To imagine apart from God is to build castles of sand that collapse in the tides of time. When you put God first, relationships shift. You stop approaching others with desperation, need, or fear because you no longer seek wholeness in them. You know your wholeness comes from within. And because you are not clinging or demanding, love flows naturally, free from fear of loss. Career and provision also shift. Instead of working in anxiety, fearing scarcity, you work in confidence, knowing that your source is inexhaustible. Money, opportunities, and favor become byproducts of alignment rather than objects of pursuit. Health too responds. The body reflects the mind, and when the mind is aligned with God first, stress dissolves, peace returns, and the body begins to respond with vitality. Putting God first is also a matter of trust. It is easy to say you believe in divine power when everything looks secure, but the real test comes when appearances contradict your faith. To put God first means that even when the outer world says no, you hold the inner yes. Even when delay stretches longer than expected, you do not surrender to despair, because you know the unseen order is still working. You place trust not in what you see, but in what you know within. You remind yourself appearances are temporary, but God is eternal. Circumstances shift, but consciousness is the root. By keeping God first, you keep your roots secure, and the branches of your life cannot wither. Many people attempt to reorder their lives by rearranging circumstances. They change jobs, cities, or relationships, believing the new setting will bring peace. But no matter where they go, they bring themselves, and if they have not put God first, the same problems reappear. For it is never the outer arrangement that dictates fulfillment, but the inner alignment. To put God first is to change the cause, and when the cause changes, effects must follow. This is why the teaching is timelessly: seek first the kingdom, the awareness of God within, and all else will be added. The world is the shadow, God is the substance. Begin with substance, and the shadow cannot help but fall into place. There is a deep freedom in living this way. You no longer wake each day wondering how to fix everything, how to force outcomes, how to defend yourself against threats. You rest in the knowledge that the presence within you is greater than any force outside you. You know that what you hold in awareness will manifest. So you guard your inner world carefully, tending to it as the most sacred garden. And in that garden, you plant only seeds of truth, love, abundance, and faith. By putting God first, you cultivate an inner life so rich that the outer world must bear fruit to match it. To align with divine order is to move from reaction to creation. You are no longer a slave to appearances, tossed about by every wave of circumstance. You become steady anchored because your foundation is God first. The storms may come, but you remain unshaken. The winds may blow, but you stand secure. This is the unshakable life, and it belongs to those who understand the priority of God above all else. To recognize that God is not outside, but within, is the greatest awakening a person can ever experience. For too long, humanity has been taught to look outward, to imagine a distant deity in the heavens, far removed from daily life, who must be pleaded with or persuaded to act. This false idea creates separation, distance, and helplessness. But when you awaken to the truth that God dwells within you, that your very imagination, your awareness, your consciousness of being is the creative power, you step into a new dimension of living. Life is no longer something happening to you, it becomes something happening through you. by you, and for you. This understanding reshapes the entire framework of existence. If God were outside, you would always be waiting on some external sign, some intervention from beyond. You would live in uncertainty, not knowing if your prayers would be heard or if your desires would be granted. But when you realize that God is within, you realize that the creative act is already yours. Your imagination is the place where creation begins, and what you dare to assume in the secrecy of your own being sets the stage for what must appear in your world. This is why your thoughts, your feelings, and your inner vision matter so deeply. They are not idle, they are seeds of reality. To know God within is to reclaim your authority. No person, no institution, no external circumstance has the right to dictate the limits of your life, for the very source of creation is woven into your being. When you imagine yourself healed, abundant, loved, or successful, you are not engaging in fantasy. You are exercising divine power. The world may not recognize this truth. Appearances may temporarily contradict it. But the law remains the same. What is impressed within must be expressed without. God within guarantees that you are never powerless, never at the mercy of chance, but always the master of your destiny. The challenge arises because people are conditioned to measure reality only by what their senses report. They look at their bank account, their body, their relationships, and conclude that this is the final truth. But the senses only report the past. They show the harvest of yesterday's seeds. The real power lies in what you dare to claim now in imagination. When you put God within at the center, you stop letting appearances dictate what is possible. You stop bowing to the evidence of lack, limitation, or delay. Instead, you choose to believe in the unseen, the inner reality, knowing that this unseen is the womb of creation. To live this way requires courage, because it means you will often stand against the crowd. The world laughs at the idea that imagination is real, that consciousness creates. The world insists on proof before belief. But to those who understand God within, the order is reversed. You believe first and the proof follows. You dare to live from the end, to assume the wish fulfilled, to embody the reality of your desire inwardly before any outer evidence exists. In that faith, you are honoring God, for you are trusting the divine presence within more than you trust the fleeting shadows outside. This awareness changes how you pray. Prayer is no longer begging or pleading to a distant power. Prayer becomes alignment, assumption, thanksgiving. You do not ask for what you already know is yours. You claim it and live as though it is done. When you want peace, you enter into peace within. When you want love, you embody love within. When you want abundance, you feel abundant within. This is true communion with God, for you and God are not two separate beings, but one life expressed in different forms. To imagine is to commune. To assume is to create. To persist inwardly is to guarantee outward manifestation. Knowing God within also dissolves fear. Fear thrives only when you believe in separation. When you think life is something outside of your control, when you imagine forces greater than yourself dictating your fate. But if God is truly within, what is there to fear? Nothing outside can overpower the presence within. No circumstance has authority over the one who carries the Creator as their very being. Even when the world shakes, you remain anchored, because your security is not built on shifting appearances, but on the eternal presence of God within. This realization is not meant to inflate ego or to turn you into a tyrant over others. On the contrary, it humbles you, because you see the same God within every person you encounter. You recognize that others are not separate from the divine flow, but are equally carriers of the same creative presence. This births compassion, forgiveness, and love. You no longer judge merely by appearances, because you know that behind every outer mask is the same eternal life, the same God expressing in unique ways. To treat others with love is to honor God within them, just as you honor God within yourself. When you walk in this awareness, life becomes a living prayer. Every thought becomes sacred, every imagination a seed, every word a declaration of power. You no longer speak idly, because you know your words are charged with creative force. You no longer allow your mind to dwell in fear or resentment, because you know these states will reproduce themselves. Instead, you choose carefully, deliberately, to dwell in truth, in love, in abundance, in joy. By doing so, you align your inner world with the nature of God, and your outer world has no choice but to reflect that alignment. This is why it is said that the kingdom of heaven is within. It is not a place you travel to, it is a state you awaken to. Heaven is not delayed for some distant future. It is available here and now, in every moment you dare to claim the truth of God within. Hell too is not a place but a state, the state of forgetting who you are, of imagining separation, of living in fear and lack. But the moment you remember, the moment you turn inward and acknowledge the presence within, you step out of darkness into light. To live this truth consistently requires practice, persistence, and devotion. The world will try to pull you back into old patterns of fear, doubt, and separation. Appearances will tempt you to forget the power within. But if you are steadfast, if you return again and again to the awareness of God as your imagination, as your consciousness of being, you will see your life transform. You will witness miracles, not as violations of natural law, but as the natural outworking of divine law. You will walk in freedom, knowing that the outer world cannot enslave the one who knows the truth within. To put God first is to rise above fear, because fear can only exist where there is forgetfulness of who you truly are. Fear is born out of separation, out of the belief that there are forces outside of you more powerful than the presence within. But the moment you awaken to the truth that God is the foundation of your being, that God is the very essence of your consciousness, fear begins to lose its grip. For how can any situation hold authority over the one who carries the creative power of the universe within? To put God first is to step into certainty, to walk in the knowledge that nothing outside of you can dictate your destiny. Fear feeds on appearances. It looks at the outer evidence of lack, sickness, or failure and concludes, this is final. Fear convinces you that circumstances are stronger than spirit, that what is visible has the last word. But when you put God first, you reverse this order. You declare that what is unseen, what is known within, has authority over what is seen. Fear tells you to bow before the outer world, but faith anchored in God within tells you to stand tall, knowing the outer must yield to the inner. To put God first is to honor the cause rather than the effect, the substance rather than the shadow, the eternal rather than the temporary. When fear rises, it often comes dressed as reason. It whispers that your dreams are too big, your resources too small, your future too uncertain. It shows you evidence of past failures and insists that tomorrow must repeat yesterday. But when God is first in your awareness, you silence those voices with a deeper truth. You remind yourself, I am not limited by appearances. I am not defined by past outcomes. I am one with the eternal presence that creates all things, and that presence is never limited. In that recognition, fear dissolves, because it cannot survive in the light of truth. Fear also thrives in comparison. It looks at others and says, they are better, stronger, more capable, more deserving. But when you put God first, you realize there is no competition in spirit. What belongs to you will come to you, because it is already yours in consciousness. What another has does not diminish you, because the source is infinite. Fear of not being enough fades away when you remember that you were created out of divine sufficiency. You are not lacking, you are not incomplete. The same God who lives in others lives in you, and you draw from the same limitless well. Fear often disguises itself as caution or wisdom, urging you to play small, to shrink back, to avoid risk. But when God is first, you understand that life expands only as much as your faith allows. Playing small may feel safe, but it imprisons you in a cage of your own making. To put God first is to dare, to step out boldly, not because you trust in human strength, but because you trust the presence within you. It is to walk through the valley knowing you are not alone, to face giants knowing they will fall, to step into the unknown knowing it is already prepared for you. Fear loses its hold when you realize that nothing outside of you has real power. Circumstances may shift, people may come and go, but the presence within remains unchanged. To put God first is to anchor yourself in what cannot be moved. Storms may rage around you, but your foundation is unshakable. Fear thrives on instability, but you dwell in stability. Fear thrives on uncertainty, but you rest in assurance. Fear thrives on the illusion of separation, but you live in unknownness. When you put God first, even challenges become transformed. What once inspired dread now becomes an opportunity to witness divine power at work. You no longer see obstacles as threats, but as invitations to trust more deeply. Every seeming setback becomes a setup for a greater revelation. Fear tells you that difficulty is the end, but faith tells you that is only the beginning of a new manifestation. By putting God first, you reframe every experience, seeing through the lens of divine order rather than human panic. Fear often tells you to wait until conditions are perfect before you act. But putting God first means you move now, knowing that conditions will align as you step forward. You do not wait for the world to approve, for the evidence to appear, or for everything to look secure. You act in faith, trusting that the unseen power is working with you. And as you move, fear falls away, because action grounded in faith leaves no room for hesitation. Even death, the greatest fear of humanity, loses its sting when you put God first. For you know that life is eternal, that what you truly are cannot die. You are not the body, not the fleeting form, but the consciousness animating it. And consciousness is God. Fear of loss, fear of endings, fear of the unknown. All of it dissolves when you know your essence is eternal and indestructible. To put God first is to know that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal has power. Fear is a shadow, and shadows disappear in light. To put God first is to let the light of truth shine so brightly within you that fear cannot survive. You no longer react to the world in panic but respond in peace. You no longer live in anxiety about tomorrow, because you know tomorrow is already prepared in spirit. You no longer doubt your worth, because you know your worth is divine. Fear cannot bind you when you walk in the awareness of God first, because love casts out fear, and God is love. To build your life on external things is to live in constant instability, for the outer world is always shifting, always changing, never still. People anchor their identity in possessions, careers, relationships, or status, believing these things to be secure. But the moment life shakes, the illusion of stability collapses. The house built on sand cannot withstand the storm, no matter how grand it appears on the surface. But to put God first is to build on rock, to ground your life in the eternal presence within, the one thing that cannot be moved. When your foundation is God, you cannot be shaken, because you rest not in shadows, but in substance, not in temporary forms, but in the eternal source of life itself. The world measures success by outward signs, bank accounts, titles, influence, recognition. But these are fragile. A change in economy can strip wealth. A shift in opinion can destroy reputation. A single event can undo years of effort. When these things are first in your life, you live in fear of losing them, for deep within you know they are uncertain. Fear, anxiety, and striving dominate when your security is tied to the unstable. But when God is first, even if all outer things fall away, you remain whole, for your foundation is not external but internal, not temporary but eternal. This unshakable foundation is not an abstract idea, it is a lived reality. When you wake in the morning and choose to turn inward before reaching outward, you are laying your foundation for the day. When you remind yourself that your source is not your employer, not your possessions, not even your loved ones, but the indwelling presence of God, you are building on rock. You carry this awareness into every interaction, every challenge, every opportunity, and you discover a stability the world cannot give. Even when conditions contradict your desire, you remain steady, because your trust is not in appearances, but in the unseen power shaping them. To build on God is to build on the truth that consciousness creates reality. What you accept as true within must appear without. This is the law. If you build your life on shifting appearances, you will forever be reacting to circumstances, tossed from one extreme to another. But if you build your life on inner truth, you become the master of circumstance, shaping reality from within rather than being shaped by it. The storm may rage, but you remain calm because you know the storm cannot alter the rock beneath your feet. Consider relationships. If you build your identity on another person, you will live in constant fear of rejection or loss. But when God is your foundation, you enter relationships not from need but from wholeness. You can love freely, without clinging, Because your security does not depend on another's presence. You honor them as expressions of the same divine source, but you do not confuse them with the source itself. And because you are secure in God, your relationships flourish, free from the desperation that so often poisons love. The same truth applies to provision. If you build your trust on a paycheck, a business, or a bank account, you will live in anxiety, for these can all change. But when you build on God, you know your supply is infinite. Money may flow through jobs, clients, or opportunities, but the source is always God. When one channel closes, another opens, because the source never runs dry. You are free from fear of scarcity, free from the endless striving to hold on, because you know abundance is your birthright in spirit. This is the stability that comes only when God is first. Health too becomes secure when built on God. If your foundation is external remedies alone, you live in fear of sickness, decline, or age. But when you build on God, you recognize that life itself flows through you, that the body is animated by spirit. You care for the body, yes, but you do not worship it or fear its frailty. You affirm health within, knowing that the outer form reflects the inner state. Even when challenges arise, you rest in peace, because your foundation is not in flesh but in spirit, and spirit is eternal. Building on God does not mean neglecting the outer world. It means placing it in proper order. You still work, love, create, and engage with life, but you do so without fear, because you know these are expressions, not sources. You live fully, but you do not cling. You enjoy, but you do not worship. You engage, but you do not depend. God is first, and everything else flows as an outpouring of that alignment. This is true freedom. To live in the world, but not be bound by it. To enjoy the gifts of life without mistaking them for the giver. The unshakable foundation of God also transforms how you face trials. When storms come, the one who built on sand collapses, but the one built on rock stands firm. Challenges may arise, but you do not despair, for you know your foundation cannot be touched. Others may panic, but you remain calm, knowing that appearances are temporary and truth is eternal. Every trial becomes a testimony of divine stability, every storm an opportunity to prove the rock beneath your feet. To build on God first is to live with eternal perspective. You no longer measure your life by fleeting achievements or temporary setbacks. You see beyond them to the deeper reality of spirit. This perspective frees you from envy, from comparison, from the endless cycle of striving. You know who you are and whose you are, and nothing external can shake that identity. Your worth is not in what you own or what you achieve, but in the eternal presence that dwells within. That worth cannot be increased or diminished. It simply is. This foundation also gives you peace. The world chases peace in possessions, positions, or people. But true peace comes only when you know you are secure in God. No matter what shifts around you, you rest in the unchanging presence within. This peace is not dependent on circumstances, it transcends them. It is not fragile, it is unbreakable. It is not fleeting, it is eternal. It is the peace of one whose life is built on rock, not on sand. When you put God first and build your life on this foundation, you discover a stability that no storm can shake, no loss can undo, no fear can erode. You discover what it means to live unshaken, rooted in eternal truth, anchored in the presence within. When God is first, love flows naturally, because God is love. To put God first is to place the essence of love at the center of your life. And when love is the foundation, everything you touch is transformed. Love is not merely a feeling that rises and falls with circumstances. It is the very nature of the divine presence within you. It is the recognition that you and all others are expressions of the same eternal life, different forms of one reality. When you truly understand this, love ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural outpouring of who you are. When God is first, you stop seeing people through the narrow lens of judgment, resentment, or fear. You begin to see them as extensions of yourself, as carriers of the same divine spark that animates you. The walls of separation crumble. Where once you saw enemies, you now see opportunities to express forgiveness. Where once you saw competition, you now see collaboration. Where once you saw strangers, you now see brothers and sisters in spirit. Love becomes the lens through which you view the world, not because you are trying to be good, but because God's presence within you cannot help but express itself as love. This love is not weak or sentimental. It is powerful, creative, and transformative. It does not ignore wrongs, but it transcends them. It does not condone injustice, but it dissolves it at its root by refusing to feed hatred with more hatred. When God is first, you no longer meet negativity with negativity, but with the higher vibration of love. You understand that to resist darkness with darkness only multiplies it, but to shine light upon it transforms it. Love is that light. Putting God first also changes the way you love yourself. Many people struggle with feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or shame, because they measure themselves against the standards of the world. But when you put God first, you realize that your worth is not determined by appearance, performance, or approval. Your worth is inherent, eternal, and unchanging because it is rooted in God. You begin to see yourself as divine, whole, and beloved. This self-recognition is not arrogance, it is humility before truth. You stop criticizing yourself, stop condemning yourself, and instead treat yourself with the same compassion you would extend to another. Out of this love for self flows an even deeper love for others, because you cannot give what you do not first possess. When God is first, relationships take on a new dimension. You no longer approach others with desperation, trying to extract from them the love you lack. You no longer manipulate or cling, because you no longer believe that another person is the source of your wholeness. Instead, you come to relationships already full, already whole, already complete in God. From this place, you can give freely without fear of loss, and in giving, you receive even more. Relationships flourish in this soil of divine love, because they are no longer burdened with unrealistic demands. You see others not as crutches to hold you up, but as mirrors reflecting the same divine presence you carry. Love flowing from God first also impacts how you handle conflict. Instead of reacting in anger, you pause and remember that the one before you is not your enemy, but another expression of the same spirit. This perspective allows you to respond with wisdom rather than impulse, with patience rather than hostility. Conflicts dissolve when met with love, because love refuses to fuel the fire of division. Even when correction is needed, it is offered from a place of compassion, not condemnation. Love always seeks restoration, never destruction. When God is first, love extends beyond people into every area of life. You begin to love your work, not just as a means of survival, but as a channel through which divine creativity flows. You love your body, not in vanity, but as the temple through which spirit expresses. You love the world, not as something to exploit, but as a sacred manifestation of divine abundance. Love becomes the atmosphere in which you live, and because love attracts, your life begins to overflow with blessings. The law of attraction is rooted in love, for like draws to like. When you radiate love, love returns multiplied. This love also becomes a shield. Fear cannot penetrate a heart filled with love. Worry cannot take root in a mind anchored in love. Even in the face of challenges, love sustains you, because love is the recognition that all things are working together for good. Love sees beyond the moment, beyond appearances, to the deeper harmony of spirit. When you put God first, this love becomes your natural state, and from this state, miracles unfold. To live in love is to live in alignment with the highest law of the universe. Every spiritual truth points to this one reality: love fulfills the law. Where love is, there is no lack, no separation, no fear. When you love, you align yourself with the creative flow of God, and everything else falls into place. Opportunities open, doors unlock, relationships heal, bodies restore, minds renew. Love is the key that unlocks every blessing, and it flows without effort when God is first. Even when others fail to love you, you remain unshaken, because your source is not outside. You do not collapse when rejected, nor do you become bitter when misunderstood, because your foundation is deeper. You understand that to love is not dependent on being loved in return. It is an expression of who you are in God. You love because it is your nature, and this love eventually transforms even the hardest of hearts, because love is irresistible. The love that flows when God is first also carries creative power. What you love, you give life to. When you love an idea, it grows. When you love a vision, it manifests. When you love a dream, it materializes. Love is the energy that sustains creation, and when you put God first, your love is purified from selfishness and fear. You no longer love things to possess them, but to allow them to express through you. And because your love is pure, it multiplies back to you in forms greater than you imagined. When God is first, love is not something you try to practice. It is who you are. It is the fragrance of your presence, the vibration of your being, the power that flows through your words and actions. This love transforms everything it touches, heals everyone it embraces, and creates a life of abundance and joy. It is the natural outflow of putting God first, for where God is, love is, and where love is, there is freedom. To put God first before anything else is to live in alignment with the eternal order of creation. It is to build your life upon the unshakable foundation of divine presence rather than the shifting sands of circumstance. When God is first, you are no longer tossed about by the winds of external change, because your root is anchored in the invisible reality that sustains all things. You discover that what is unseen is more real than what is seen, and you begin to trust the inner world over the outer. This trust gives you stability, confidence, and peace that the world cannot give. You realize that the key to life is not striving, grasping, or forcing outcomes, but surrendering your priority to the source from which everything flows. To put God first is to put harmony first, to put truth first, to put love first. It is to recognize that when the center is aligned, the circumference takes care of itself. Just as a wheel cannot turn properly if its hub is off balance, life cannot flow smoothly when God is not at the center. But when God is first, everything else begins to find its rightful place. Relationships are healed, opportunities open, guidance is received, and even challenges transform into stepping stones. When God is first, you stop living from fear. Fear is the fruit of believing that circumstances control your destiny. But faith is the fruit of knowing that God within you is the author of your life. Fear fades when you recognize that no situation, no person, no opposition can stand against the power of God expressing in you. What once seemed overwhelming now appears small when measured against the infinite. You begin to live with courage because you know that the greater is within you. You no longer ask, "What will I do?" but "What is God revealing through me?" That shift in perspective changes everything because it removes the weight from your shoulders and places it back where it belongs, on the infinite wisdom and power of God. When God is first, you also discover that imagination is holy. The world will teach you to bow down to facts, to statistics, to appearances. But when God is first, you bow down to vision, to faith, to the unseen. You understand that what you imagine with conviction becomes your reality, because imagination is not idle fantasy. It is the creative activity of God within you. To put God first is to put imagination first, to honor the unseen over the seen, to walk by faith and not by sight. You realize that what you hold in your mind with love and conviction must eventually appear in your world. Life is not random. It is a mirror reflecting your innermost assumptions. By putting God first, you choose your assumptions carefully, you plant seeds of faith rather than doubt, and you cultivate an inner garden that blossoms with divine abundance. To put God first is also to embrace love as your nature. For God is love, and to make Him your priority is to allow love to flow as the guiding principle of your life. Love dissolves separation, transforms conflict, and heals wounds. When God is first, you see others not as strangers or opponents, but as fellow expressions of the same Spirit. You stop needing to control or manipulate relationships because you are already whole in God. Love frees you from dependence and turns every connection into an opportunity for divine expression. Even in difficulty, love gives you patience and compassion. Even in rejection, love keeps you whole. Even in loss, love sustains you with hope. Love is the greatest evidence that God is first, because where love flows, God is present. This way of living transforms not only your relationships, but every area of life. Work ceases to be a burden and becomes a channel of creativity. Health is renewed because the body reflects the harmony of spirit. Finances align because abundance flows naturally where fear is absent. Even the simplest experiences, walking, breathing, eating, become holy when God is first, because you see them as expressions of the divine. You stop waiting for some future blessing and recognize that the presence of God here and now is already the greatest blessing. When God is first, you are no longer divided. You do not serve two masters, torn between spirit and the world. You understand that the world itself is the outpicturing of spirit, that appearances are shadows of inner substance. To put God first is to put unity first, to stop living in contradiction, and to live wholly from within outward. This integrity of being brings peace, because you are no longer at war with yourself. The mind is settled, the heart is clear, and the spirit is free. Putting God first does not mean neglecting the outer world, it means honoring it in its rightful place. The outer world is the effect, not the cause. When you put the cause, God first, the effect naturally reflects it. This is why so many exhaust themselves chasing after things, achievements, or approval, only to find emptiness. They have reversed the order. They have placed the shadow before the substance, the echo before the sound. But when God is first, you return to the true order of life. You let the unseen guide the seen, the eternal guide the temporary, the inner guide the outer. In this alignment, peace reigns, joy flows, and abundance becomes inevitable. So the call is simple yet profound: put God first. Not your fears, not your doubts, not the opinions of others, not the shifting appearances of the world, but God, the presence within you, the love at your core, the power of imagination, the source of life. When you do, everything else falls into place. Life is no longer a struggle but a dance, no longer a burden but a blessing, no longer a question but an unfolding answer. The moment you truly put God first, you step into harmony with the divine rhythm of creation. You stop running after shadows and begin walking in the light. You discover that all you sought outside was already within, waiting to be expressed. You find yourself at peace, not because the world has changed, but because you have. And in that change, the world does transform, for it is only ever a reflection of you. To put God first is to return to your true nature, and in that return you find freedom. What you hold in the theater of your mind becomes the play that unfolds upon the stage of your life. Every thought you dwell upon, every image you clothe with feeling, every word you speak with conviction is a seed planted in the unseen soil of consciousness. And just as surely as a seed brings forth after its kind, so does the harvest of your focus return to you in form. You cannot dwell upon lack and expect abundance. You cannot rehearse rejection and expect acceptance. You cannot give all your energy to fear and then hope that love will knock at your door. Life is impartial. It reflects back to you not what you wish in passing, but what you truly give your attention to with persistence. When you focus, you magnetize. You draw toward you the essence of what you are dwelling upon. It is not enough to casually think a thought for a moment. It is the repeated, saturated attention, mixed with feeling, that imprints upon the deeper layers of your being. That is why two people can walk through the same world and experience two different realities. One, filled with gratitude and expectancy, sees opportunities, connections, and blessings everywhere. The other, filled with complaints and criticism, sees only barriers, enemies, and reasons to despair. Both are right, for both are attracting the world they are focused on. The truth is simple: though many miss it, your outer life is nothing more than your inner focus made visible. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. Circumstances are at the mercy of you. When you shift the inner dialogue, the outer reflection cannot resist conforming. Your mind is the workshop of creation, and the raw material is thought. Every moment you are fashioning tomorrow with the clay of what you hold in awareness today. So ask yourself, what are you rehearsing? Do you rehearse conversations of defeat where you are misunderstood, mistreated, or overlooked? Do you go over again and again the story of how things never work out for you? Or do you hold within yourself the vision of victory, of being loved, of standing tall, of living in abundance? The choice is always yours, and the universe is ever ready to echo it back. Consider the power of your imagination. What you see there is more real than the facts that now confront you, for facts belong to the past, but imagination belongs to eternity. If you will dare to persist in the unseen image of your desire, even when the outer world contradicts it, you will discover that the outer must eventually yield. But if you give more focus to the evidence of your senses than to the vision of your heart, you will remain bound to the old story. This is why the command is always to guard the mind, to watch what you allow to linger in awareness. Passing thoughts may come, like birds flying across the sky, but you need not let them build nests within you. You decide which thoughts are permitted to stay and be fed, for they are the ones that will multiply and take root. Choose carefully, for what you focus on you attract. Every great transformation begins first as an inner decision to focus differently. The sick man who refuses to dwell on his illness, but instead sees himself whole, has already begun the work of healing. The poor man who dares to imagine wealth and feels himself rich has already planted the seed of prosperity. The lonely soul who closes the door on rejection and instead imagines love has already set in motion the chain of events that will draw love near. All of it is determined not by chance, but by focus. So let your focus be deliberate. Instead of reacting to appearances, create from vision. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What am I giving my attention to?" Life is a mirror, not a master. It reflects but never dictates. When you understand this, you reclaim your power. You stop blaming and you start creating. The invitation is clear: lift your focus, and you will lift your life. Hold fast to the inner image of your desire. Clothe it with the feeling of its reality, and persist in it as though it were already here. The world will rearrange itself, circumstances will shift, and opportunities will appear as though by magic. But it will not be magic, it will be law. For what you focus on, you attract, and the universe is forever faithful to reflect you back to yourself. Your focus shapes your reality, and this is not merely a poetic idea, but an unchanging law of life. Wherever your attention goes, energy flows, and wherever energy flows, something begins to take form. To focus is to give life. What you continually entertain in the privacy of your thoughts eventually walks into the public space of your experience. It is not chance, nor is it coincidence, that your life mirrors back to you what you have been most occupied with in your inner world. The conditions around you are not random accidents, but living reflections of the pictures you hold, the emotions you feed, and the thoughts you revisit with intensity. Think for a moment about the way a magnifying glass works. If you scatter the sunlight, it warms but does little more. But if you concentrate the rays through a small point, suddenly fire ignites. The sun was always powerful, but it is focus that releases the hidden energy. In the same way, your mind is a constant projector of images, feelings, and stories. Most people scatter this energy without direction, allowing fear, gossip, memory, and worry to dictate the stream of attention. Yet the one who chooses consciously where to focus is the one who ignites transformation. That is the law: the more you give your mind to a thing, the more that thing is called into your experience. Your life today is the sum of what you gave attention to yesterday. Every word you spoke, every image you entertained, every inner conversation you repeated has accumulated and crystallized into your circumstances. This can be an uncomfortable truth, for it forces us to admit that we are not victims of the world, but architects of it. But once accepted, this truth becomes liberating. If focus has created the life you are living, then focus can also reshape it. If what you see outside is not pleasing to you, the answer is not in fighting the world, but in turning inward and adjusting what you give your mind to. Imagine someone who constantly dwells upon their limitations. They think about what they cannot do, where they fall short, and how others seem to be ahead of them. This focus gradually builds a reality where opportunities shrink, confidence wanes, and even the smallest tasks feel overwhelming. The outer world begins to confirm what the inner world has rehearsed. On the other hand, take the one who deliberately shifts attention to their strengths, their gifts, and the possibility that life is working in their favor. Such a focus awakens courage, draws forth creativity, and attracts situations that align with this inner conviction. The world again reflects the focus, but this time in a way that uplifts and empowers. The mind does not care whether what you focus on is good or bad, wanted or unwanted. It simply magnifies it. If you give constant energy to worry, worry will grow into circumstances that justify more worry. If you focus on gratitude, gratitude will multiply into experiences that give you more to be grateful for. This is why it is often said that you cannot escape the result of your focus. Your inner life is a magnet, and it does not discriminate. It only attracts. Even science offers glimpses into this truth. In psychology, we know that selective attention shapes perception. A person can walk into a room full of people and, depending on what they are focused on, either feel invisible or deeply connected. They see evidence for what they already hold inside. If they expect rejection, they will interpret a casual glance as proof of dislike. If they expect friendship, the same glance becomes a smile of welcome. The world has not changed, only the lens of focus has, and reality bends accordingly. This is why the discipline of focus is so vital. Your mind, left to its own devices, will wander into the familiar grooves it has practiced for years. If those grooves are filled with fear, doubt, and limitation, then life will continue to echo them back. But with intention, you can direct focus toward what you desire rather than what you dread. You can persistently hold the picture of health, wealth, love, and freedom until these become more real in your imagination than the appearances of the moment. In time, the outer must adjust to match the sustained inner image. The power of focus is also seen in how it transforms the way you feel in the present moment. A person who dwells on failure feels heavy and discouraged, even if nothing around them has changed. A person who dwells on possibility feels energized and hopeful, even in the same environment. These feelings are not trivial. They are the vibration that calls corresponding circumstances into being. Your emotional state is the immediate evidence of what you are focusing on. Change the focus and the feeling shifts. Shift the feeling and life begins to realign. Many people make the mistake of believing they must wait for circumstances to change before they can change their focus. They say, "I will feel abundant when I have more money," or "I will feel loved when the right person arrives." But this is to misunderstand the law. The outer follows the inner, never the other way around. You must focus first on the feeling of abundance within, even if your wallet is empty. You must focus on the feeling of love within, even if you sit alone. By embodying the focus now, you send out a signal that cannot return void. The new reality is drawn to you, not because you begged for it, but because you aligned with it. Consider the farmer who plants seeds. He does not dig them up the next day to see if they are growing. He knows the soil is faithful. In the same way, when you give focused attention to a vision, you must persist even when nothing appears to be happening. The soil of consciousness cannot fail. It must return what is planted. The only question is whether you will persist in the focus long enough for it to bear fruit. Your focus is also the measure of your faith. To focus on what you desire, even in the face of contradiction, is to affirm that the unseen is more real than the seen. It is to declare that imagination holds more weight than facts. Facts change. What you focus on with persistence becomes the new fact. But most surrender too quickly. They let the outer world distract their focus, and so they repeat the same cycles year after year. Those who master the art of focus, however, master the art of life itself. So when you look at your life, understand that it is not separate from you. It is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Every relationship, every opportunity, every challenge is drawn by the magnet of your focus. Change the focus and you change the story. Hold the new focus with persistence, and the story rewrites itself in your favor. This is not wishful thinking, it is law. What you choose to focus on today is already shaping the reality you will meet tomorrow. Thoughts mixed with feeling become magnetized, and this is the true secret behind creation. A thought by itself is like a seed lying dormant on the surface of the ground. It carries the potential for life, but until it is planted and watered, nothing springs forth. In the same way, fleeting thoughts pass through your mind each day, but only those you clothe with emotion, those you feel deeply, sink into the fertile soil of the subconscious and begin to grow into your lived experience. Feeling is the water, the sunlight, the nourishment that awakens the dormant seed of thought. Without feeling, a thought is powerless. With feeling, it becomes magnetic, and begins to draw to itself everything of like vibration. This is why so many people struggle with affirmations or positive thinking when they treat them as mere words. They recite lines without emotion, hoping the repetition alone will bring change. But unless the thought is fused with genuine feeling, it has no power to create. You cannot simply say, "I am successful," while feeling deep inside that you are a failure and expect success to appear. The subconscious accepts only what you feel to be true. It rejects empty words but faithfully reproduces anything accompanied by conviction and emotion. That is why imagination is so potent. When you imagine something vividly and allow yourself to feel the thrill of its reality, the subconscious takes it as fact and sets in motion the unseen forces that make it so. Feelings are the currents that charge thoughts with life. When you think of lack, and at the same time feel anxious about it, you magnetize more lack. When you think of illness and feel fear, you strengthen the illness. But when you think of abundance and allow yourself to feel the joy and relief of already having it, you magnetize abundance. When you imagine health and feel the freedom of it, your body and circumstances begin to shift toward health. The law is impartial. It does not judge between positive or negative, good or bad. It simply returns to you in form whatever thought you have consistently united with feeling. To understand this, picture a radio station. A thought alone is like a frequency being broadcast, but without power it is faint and scattered. Feeling is the electricity that amplifies the signal, sending it out strongly and clearly. Once it is broadcast, it attracts a response on the same frequency. So when you think of success with indifference, the signal is weak and no response comes. But when you think of success and feel the triumph, the gratitude, the excitement of it, the signal is strong and success is drawn to you with precision. Life responds to the intensity of your inner broadcast. It is also why memory can be so powerful. You may replay an old wound in your mind and feel the sting of it again, though the event is long past. In that moment, you are magnetizing more of the same vibration, because the subconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly felt. If you repeatedly imagine betrayal and feel the pain, you unconsciously draw into your life circumstances that echo betrayal. But the same principle works for your good. If you imagine joy and feel it deeply, even before it appears, you call joy into being. If you picture success and feel the pride of achievement, you send out a magnetic pull that gathers success to you. Feeling is not something to fear, but something to master. Many believe they are at the mercy of their emotions, that feelings rise and fall outside their control. But feelings are the result of what you choose to focus on and how you interpret it. By shifting your inner attention, you can generate new feelings at will. Think of a time when you recalled a pleasant memory and suddenly felt lighter. Nothing outside you changed, you shifted focus and created a new feeling. The same principle can be used deliberately. By choosing to dwell on the image of what you desire and entering into the feeling of it already fulfilled, you create a magnetic state that draws it toward you. This is why persistence is essential. A single flash of feeling can plant a seed, but repeated feeling waters it until it grows strong. When you persist in imagining yourself as you desire to be, consistently feel the reality of it, the subconscious becomes saturated with the new state. Once impressed, it must express. Your life begins to change, not because of force or effort, but because the law responds to the magnetized thoughts you have implanted. Every transformation that has ever taken place began with a thought that was felt deeply. The artist feels the beauty of the painting before it is finished. The musician feels the music before it is written. The inventor feels the solution before it appears in physical form. The feeling fuels the thought, and the thought clothed with feeling becomes magnetic enough to call the invisible into visibility. Even prayer is powerless without feeling. Words alone are empty vibrations, but when words are charged with deep emotion, whether gratitude, faith, or love, they ascend with power and return with results. That is why the most effective prayers are not long or complicated, but simple words uttered from the heart with deep conviction. The universe does not respond to syllables, but to the vibration behind them, and that vibration is determined by feeling. So understand this truth. Every time you allow yourself to dwell upon a thought and feel it as though it were real, you are setting in motion a magnetic force that draws to you experiences that match it. Whether you are conscious of it or not, you are always impressing the subconscious with your feelings, and the subconscious is always creating in response. This is not a power reserved for a few, it is the natural operation of life. You are magnetizing your reality right now with the thoughts you are feeling in this very moment. The invitation, then, is to become deliberate. Instead of allowing fear, anger, and worry to magnetize more of what you do not want, choose to dwell on thoughts of love, peace, and abundance, and allow yourself to feel their reality until they become your natural state. Persist in this, and you will discover that the world around you begins to bend, situations align, and opportunities arise that mirror the magnetized state within you. Thoughts alone are weak. Thoughts fused with feeling are irresistible. They go forth with power and return with form, for the law is unfailing. What you feel is true, you magnetize, and what you magnetize, you inevitably attract. Imagination overrides present circumstances, and this is one of the greatest secrets of life. The senses tell you what appears to be true in the moment, but imagination shows you what can be true beyond appearances. The world you see with your physical eyes is nothing more than the residue of past states you once entertained in consciousness. What you imagined and felt as real yesterday has solidified into the facts you live with today. If you accept only what your senses report, you chain yourself to the old story and repeat it again and again. But when you dare to trust imagination more than appearances, you unlock the ability to rise above limitations and call into being an entirely new reality. Think of the senses as reporters of the past. They can only tell you what has already taken shape, like a photograph frozen in time. They cannot tell you what is possible. The imagination, on the other hand, is the creative power that shapes tomorrow. To dwell only on the evidence of the senses is to live in bondage to yesterday. To dwell in imagination is to step into the freedom of creation. This is why every breakthrough, every invention, every masterpiece began first as an imagined vision that overrode the facts of the moment. The one who trusts imagination has power over circumstances, while the one who trusts only the senses remains bound by them. Consider the man who is unemployed. His senses scream that he has no job, that opportunities are scarce, that bills are piling up. If he accepts this as final, his imagination becomes the servant of despair. He replays scenarios of rejection. He envisions himself struggling, and the cycle continues. But if he dares, in the privacy of his inner world, to imagine himself already employed, already thriving, already contributing, something shifts. He steps into a state of being that contradicts the senses. He may walk the same streets, live in the same home, but inwardly he has moved into a new reality. By persisting in that imagined state, life eventually conforms. The job appears, the opportunity arises, and the outer world reflects what the imagination had long held as true. This principle operates not only in grand changes, but in the smallest details of life. If you walk into a gathering and imagine yourself ignored, you will act in ways that fulfill that vision, and others will respond accordingly. If you imagine yourself welcomed and valued, you carry yourself with ease and openness, and others are drawn to you. The circumstance may be identical, but imagination determines the outcome. You do not experience life as it is, you experience life as you imagine it to be. It is tempting to believe that imagination is merely daydreaming or fantasy. But the truth is that imagination is the only creative force there is. The world you see now was once invisible, held first in the mind of someone who dared to imagine it. The chair you sit on, the building you live in, the device in your hand, all began as ideas in the unseen realm of imagination. Nothing exists that was not first imagined. The imagination is more real than the physical, for the physical fades, but imagination endures and continues to create. This is why it is so important not to let the senses dictate the limits of what is possible. A sick body may show symptoms, but in imagination you can see yourself whole and vibrant. A bank account may show lack, but in imagination you can see yourself abundant and free. The outer report may be discouraging, but if you give more weight to imagination, the outer must eventually yield. The law cannot be broken. What you persist in imagining and feeling as real must objectify itself in the world of facts. Imagination does not ask whether something is reasonable or possible according to current evidence. It bypasses logic and deals directly with creation. That is why many great achievements were once mocked as impossible. Flight was once considered absurd until someone imagined it vividly enough to bring it forth. Electricity, communication across oceans, landing on the moon, all of these began as images that overrode present circumstances. If their creators had listened only to the senses, they would have surrendered. Instead, they trusted imagination, and imagination reshaped the world. You too hold this power. In every situation, you can choose to bow to appearances or to rise into imagination. If you are lonely, the senses tell you that you are alone. But in imagination, you can walk in the reality of companionship, of deep love, of connection. By feeling it real inwardly, you attract circumstances that match it outwardly. If you are struggling financially, the senses tell you there is not enough. But in imagination, you can experience the thrill of freedom, the joy of abundance, the relief of plenty. By persisting in that inner reality, life reorganizes itself to reflect it. It is not about ignoring the outer world or pretending it does not exist. It is about recognizing that the outer is temporary and subject to change, while imagination is eternal and creative. The facts may scream loudly, but they are powerless against a sustained inner vision. Circumstances are shadows, imagination is substance. Circumstances are echoes, imagination is the voice. To give authority to imagination over the senses is to place yourself at the helm of creation rather than being tossed by the waves of appearances. Children naturally live this way. A child may sit in an empty room and imagine a kingdom, a feast, a world of adventure. To them, it is real, and their joy springs from that reality. Adults trained to worship facts lose this gift. They forget that imagination is not less real than the senses, but more real. The invitation is to return to that childlike power, to dare to believe that what you imagine with feeling has more weight than the circumstances pressing upon you. The great secret is persistence. A passing daydream does little, but sustained imagination, revisited again and again with feeling, carves a groove in the subconscious. Once impressed there, it must express. The outer world has no choice but to conform. This is why it is said, imagination creates reality. Not some of the time, not occasionally, but always. What you imagine with conviction becomes the fact of tomorrow. So when the senses shout lack, imagine abundance. When they shout sickness, imagine health. When they shout failure, imagine triumph. Do not bow to appearances, let imagination override them. The outer world may resist for a time, but if you persist, it cannot hold out forever. Imagination is the higher law, and the lower must yield. You are never trapped by circumstances, for you carry within yourself the power to imagine a greater reality. And when you dare to live more in that imagined state than in the evidence of your senses, you will discover that the world bends to the authority of your inner vision. Life reflects inner vision, not outer facts. And this is the foundation of all true transformation. What you see around you is not the cause of your experience, but the effect of what you have been entertaining inwardly. Outer facts are like shadows cast upon the wall, but the substance, the light that produces those shadows, is your inner vision. If you try to change life by wrestling with the shadows, you will exhaust yourself, for the shadows have no power of their own. But if you change the vision within, the shadows must alter. The outer cannot resist the command of the inner. Most people live as though outer facts are final. They believe they are poor because their bank account shows a small balance, sick because the doctor's report gives a diagnosis, lonely because no one currently stands beside them. They bow to the evidence of the senses and call it truth. Yet what they fail to realize is that these facts are merely the harvest of earlier inner visions. The bank balance, the body condition, the empty room, all are the outpicturing of states once accepted within. They are not ultimate reality, they are passing expressions. They are the result of yesterday's consciousness, and they will fade as a new vision takes hold. To understand this is to reclaim your power. If life reflects inner vision, then you need not wait for the world to change before you feel different. You need not wait for abundance before you feel rich, for by feeling rich within you plant the seed that life must reflect as abundance. You need not wait for health before you feel whole, for by seeing yourself whole in imagination, you set in motion the processes that bring health to pass. You need not wait for companionship before you feel loved, for by entering the vision of being loved now, you magnetize the relationships that confirm it. Life mirrors you always and without fail. Consider how a mirror works. If you frown into a mirror, the reflection frowns back. You cannot demand that the reflection smile while you continue to scowl. The outer will not change until the inner changes first. Yet countless people stand before the mirror of life, begging it to alter while they persist in the same inner state. They hope for abundance while continually envisioning lack. They pray for love while entertaining visions of rejection. They long for peace while rehearsing turmoil. The mirror cannot contradict the image held before it. Change the inner picture, and the reflection must follow. This is why the inner vision is so much more important than outer facts. Facts are temporary, vision is creative. Facts belong to the past, vision belongs to eternity. The facts may declare you limited, but vision proclaims you free. The facts may say you are stuck, but vision opens doors no man can shut. If you cling to facts, you are chained to what was. If you hold to vision, you step into what can be. Every great accomplishment, every victory, every transformation began first as an inner vision that contradicted the facts of the moment. Think of the great leaders, inventors, and dreamers of history. The facts told them it could not be done. The facts said the world was flat, that man could not fly, that cures were impossible, that barriers were immovable. But they chose to live in the vision of something greater. They persisted in that vision until the facts bent to match it. The world remembers them not because they bowed to circumstances, but because they held fast to vision until circumstances bowed to them. The same law applies to you. Whatever you consistently see inwardly will, in time, appear outwardly. If your vision is filled with fear, fear will color every experience. If your vision is filled with doubt, doubt will shadow every opportunity. But if your vision is filled with faith, faith will open doors. If your vision is filled with abundance, abundance will take form. If your vision is filled with love, love will find its way to you. Life has no choice, for it is bound by law to reflect the vision you hold. It is not enough to occasionally imagine a better outcome. The inner vision must be sustained, revisited, and felt as real. Just as a photographer develops an image by exposing film to light over time, so the subconscious develops the vision you impress upon it with persistence. Every time you return to the inner picture of your desire, every time you feel it more vividly, you deepen the impression. And once the impression is sealed within, the outer world must conform. Do not be discouraged if the facts seem stubborn at first. The old reflection may linger for a time, just as the echo of a word lingers after the sound has ceased. But the echo fades and the new sound takes over. So it is with vision. Hold fast to the new inner image, and the outer facts must eventually adjust. They cannot withstand the authority of a sustained vision. The truth is that you are not living in the world of facts at all. You are living in the world of your assumptions. Two people can face the same facts and experience entirely different lives because their inner visions differ. One sees opportunity where another sees failure. One feels love where another feels rejection. One thrives where another withers. The difference is not in the outer facts, but in the inner vision through which those facts are interpreted. This is why inner work is the highest work. To polish the inner vision is to polish life itself. To elevate the inner picture is to elevate your entire existence. To change what you hold within is to change what you meet without. When you understand this, you stop fighting circumstances and start creating vision. You stop complaining about facts and start shaping the future. You stop waiting for change and begin embodying it now. Life reflects inner vision, not outer facts. The facts are but footprints of where you have been. The vision is the compass pointing to where you are going. If you desire a new reflection, change the picture you are holding within. Refuse to be hypnotized by what is and choose, instead to live in the certainty of what can be. The world is not your master but your mirror. And when you look inward and adjust the vision, the reflection cannot resist. It must obey. Deliberate focus creates transformation, for nothing in life changes by accident. Every shift, every breakthrough, every new chapter begins first with a conscious decision to direct attention in a new way. Most people live in reaction, allowing circumstances to dictate where their focus goes. They see problems and fixate on them. They hear negative reports and dwell on them. They encounter setbacks and replay them endlessly in thought. In doing so, they unintentionally perpetuate the very states they long to escape. But the moment a person takes hold of their focus and directs it with intention, the current of life begins to move in a different direction. Transformation is not random, it is the inevitable outcome of deliberate attention. Focus is the steering wheel of consciousness. Wherever you point it, the rest of your being follows. If you steer toward fear, your emotions, your words, and your actions align with fear, and soon your experiences do as well. If you steer toward faith, your whole being aligns with confidence, expectation, and courage, and the world begins to mirror this. Transformation occurs not because the outer world suddenly decides to change, but because you have shifted the inner point of attention that calls forth a new outer arrangement. Think of a gardener tending a field. If he allows weeds to grow unchecked, the field becomes overrun, no matter how much he wishes for flowers. But if he deliberately removes the weeds and plants seeds of his choosing, the field gradually transforms into a garden. The soil is neutral, it will grow whatever is planted. Your mind is the same. If you allow your focus to drift aimlessly, you grow weeds of fear, doubt, and limitation. But when you deliberately focus on visions of abundance, love, health, and peace, those are the seeds that take root. With persistence, the garden of your life transforms. Deliberate focus requires discipline, for the senses constantly demand your attention. The world presents facts, distractions, and appearances that scream for recognition. If you are not intentional, you will be pulled into old patterns of reaction. But the one who masters focus learns to turn away from appearances and return again and again to the inner image of their desire. Even when the outer world contradicts it, they hold steady within. This deliberate choice to give attention to the vision rather than the fact is what produces transformation. Life eventually yields to the inner focus, for the inner is the cause and the outer is the effect. Transformation does not come from scattered efforts. Many dabble with focus, thinking positively for a moment, imagining a better future for a day, and then returning to doubt and worry. Such inconsistency produces little change, for the soil cannot bring forth a harvest from seeds that are constantly uprooted. Deliberate focus means sustained attention. It means returning again and again to the vision, feeding it with feeling, living from it inwardly until it becomes natural. When focus is sustained, the subconscious accepts it as reality, and the transformation begins to unfold in ways that often appear miraculous to the casual observer. But deliberate focus is not about straining or forcing. It is about choosing gently, but firmly where you place your awareness, and refusing to be dragged into states that do not serve you. It is like training the lens of a camera, pointed at chaos and chaos fills the frame. Pointed at beauty and beauty is revealed. The scene is determined by the direction of the lens, and in the same way, your experience of life is determined by the direction of your focus. Deliberate focus is the art of choosing the scene you wish to live in and holding to it until it becomes your reality. This principle can be seen in every area of life. A person who focuses deliberately on gratitude begins to notice blessings everywhere. The outer world may not have changed overnight, but their experience of it has transformed. Another who focuses on love finds themselves surrounded by opportunities to give and receive it. One who focuses on abundance sees doors open where before there were only walls. The deliberate shift in focus alters the inner state, and the inner state draws to itself new experiences that match it. Even in times of difficulty, deliberate focus holds the power to transform. When challenges arise, the natural tendency is to dwell on the problem, to rehearse the pain, to magnify the obstacle. But those who choose instead to focus deliberately on the solution, on the vision beyond the difficulty, find that strength rises within them, doors appear, and ways are made. The challenge may not vanish instantly, but the focus shifts the inner state, and the inner state changes the way the challenge is met. Transformation occurs not by resisting the problem, but by deliberately choosing a higher focus. Deliberate focus also awakens resilience. Life will always present contrasts. Moments of joy and sorrow, gain and loss, clarity and confusion. But when you know that focus is the true creative power, you no longer feel helpless before these shifts. You recognize that circumstances are transient, but your focus is sovereign. No matter what arises, you can choose where to place your attention, and in doing so, you choose the trajectory of your future. This realization alone transforms despair into empowerment, for you are never without choice. The transformation produced by deliberate focus is often subtle at first, like the quiet growth of a seed underground. You may not see immediate results, but something is happening beneath the surface. The more you persist, the more momentum builds, until suddenly the change breaks through into visibility. Others may call it luck, fate, or coincidence, but you will know it is the fruit of your deliberate focus. What once seemed impossible becomes natural, and what once felt out of reach becomes the very substance of your life. Ultimately, deliberate focus is the practice of aligning yourself with the life you desire rather than the life you fear. It is the refusal to give attention to states that diminish you and the choice to give energy only to those that uplift and expand you. Over time, this practice does more than change your circumstances, it changes you. It transforms your identity, your sense of self, your way of being in the world. And as you are transformed within, life must reflect the transformation without. Deliberate focus creates transformation because it is the act of taking authorship of your own consciousness. No longer a passive spectator, you become the director of the inner play, and life, faithful to its nature, performs it on the stage of the outer world. The transformation is inevitable, for the law cannot fail. What you persistently and deliberately focus upon with feeling will become the reality you inhabit. The truth is simple yet profoundly powerful. Life is always answering the call of your focus. The outer world bends itself around the inner pattern you sustain. What you choose to dwell upon is what you are inviting into form. If you allow the noise of circumstance to dictate your attention, you will be tossed about by every passing wind. But if you hold your gaze steady on the vision of what you desire, if you feed it with faith, with persistence, with unwavering attention, then life must conform. It has no choice, for creation responds only to the image impressed upon it from within. This is the great responsibility and the great freedom. You are not at the mercy of the outer world. You carry within you the power to shape it by the deliberate use of your focus. Transformation is not a matter of luck, nor is it something reserved for the few. It is the natural outcome of sustained attention to a chosen state. The moment you decide, truly decide, to give yourself wholly to the vision of your desire and refuse to be swayed by appearances, the process of transformation begins. So let your focus become sacred. Guard it as you would guard the most precious treasure. Refuse to waste it on what diminishes you, and pour it instead into the life you long to live. Train your mind to return again and again to the inner picture until it becomes more real to you than the facts around you. For when the inner world becomes fixed, the outer world cannot help but follow. The power is in your hands, in your mind, in your ability to direct attention with purpose. Do not wait for change to come from outside. Be the one who initiates it within. Deliberately choose the state you will occupy and remain faithful to it. In that faithfulness, transformation will come. And when it does, it will not feel forced, but natural, as though it had always been so. This is the law of life. What you focus on, you attract, and what you attract becomes the world you live in.